Ladies and gentlemen, episode 7 of our recap show. I am so excited to be here, just like I say every time, but this time it's true. Um, it was a fantastic episode. I listened to it 4 times in a row, not because I couldn't figure it out, but because it was just so interesting. There was a panel which I thought was very fascinating. And each time I sort of got into the mind of the individuals who were speaking, and it gave me a new perspective on the episode each time. In fact, that leads me to my first question. This was the first episode that we did where we had such a large panel on the show, and it added an interesting dynamic as a listener, as an audience member. I was curious what it was like for you guys producing it and recording it on your end. And is that something that we would be open to doing again? Well, why don't we start with you, Pat?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I was going to let Lynn take it, but yeah, totally. So it was great. It's awesome to talk to another team about doing something similar, right? Different, the same, but different. And we, of course, would be open to more panel episodes where there's multiple guests. We haven't necessarily found ourselves in a position where having a panel has been particularly relevant to a topic we're exploring. However, it is really fun to have different voices and like a larger group conversation kind of happening concurrently. But as far as producing, it was one team on one show. So fortunately, it wasn't too many pieces to pull from, different places. And overall, just a really fun experience and a great episode. I really liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun. And I was thankful that we all have very distinct voices. Because I think if any of us had voices similar to each other, it might have been more confusing. And
Do you
there were
mean
a
that
few
like
times.
literally had similar
Yeah,
voices,
no,
or
no, no,
like
like
in
like
terms of
literally, yeah. Because so
oh
so if somebody who sounded just like me, said something like, was that Lynn or was that other
The
person?
fear of every
So
podcast producer is
yeah,
that people have the same voice.
the same
Also,
voice.
we did have a plug. Lynn was on their show, so
Yes,
we
I
had a
was.
direct route to the team of
Yeah.
Intertwined. It was very nice.
Yeah, which was super cool. They interviewed me for, gosh, at least an hour. And then they had clips in, I think, episodes 1 and 2, maybe another one. Um, and then later on, they made a podcast where they used a bunch of stuff that they couldn't use in the original podcast, which is kind of what our podcast became from our docu-series. So, these things are good. We like these jumping off projects. And yeah, it was a lot of fun because, you get all these different perspectives and all these different viewpoints. But at the same time, everyone was super. We all know each other. We're super respectful and just wanted to hear what everyone had to say. And so it was really enjoyable to me. I think it helped that we here had visuals, and I know we don't have visuals, yet in our podcast. But I think for me,
ooh,
it
is that a
helped.
foreshadowing?
Perhaps, yes.
Absolutely, no surprise, but we will eventually move towards video.
Yeah.
Love that. Oh well, that's
Or you heard it here first.
well, I did not have trouble following it, and again, I loved it. So I look forward to us hopefully doing that again with teams at large, and even possibly offering some alternative perspectives. Like I've seen on some of the news shows or something like that, where we could. I don't know. I'm spitballing ideas here live, so. Um, but listening to it a bunch of times, one part of it really did stand out to me a lot. Um, Isaac sort of brought it all together with what he said, but the whole team was really talking about it. Was the idea of whose responsibility is it to educate people whose scope of education, let's say, was narrowly provided to them by school, right? So I don't want to make any political claims that it wasn't taught or anything was intentional. Just there's only so much time, let's say, and the scope of what you learn in school is narrow. And then Isaac pointed out that, as you learn more, you might feel betrayed, or you might start to ask more questions. So where does the responsibility of educating people then lie? Is it in historical institutions? Is it from podcasts? Do we understand that responsibility that we have in Too Complicated for History? No. Do we understand that responsibility that we have at primary source media, that
Sure.
young
So
minds might
I-
rely
I'm going
on
to flip.
us? Yeah.
I'm going to flip the question on its head just a little bit here.
Mhm.
I don't think it's a matter of whose responsibility. I think the bigger issue is that we're not led to have a thirst for more. Right? We take
Mhm.
things at face value, and whether that's because I need to ace the test or I didn't find this interesting, what we're talking about is building trust, and the only way you build trust is by having all of the information. And frankly, we'll never have all of the information. And so, like, in regards to primary source and its responsibility, I wouldn't call it a responsibility, but it is absolutely one of our goals to inspire curiosity, to make people want more information. And so I think, what they talk about in the episode is, some people say, hey, I never learned this, I must have missed it, or I feel like a part of this was left out, maybe it's something I connect with. Whereas other people might have an adverse reaction, like, hey, I didn't learn this, that's not it. And
Mhm.
that's the break in trust that we talk about in the episode. And I think at large, as a society, it's more important for us to understand we need context for everything. And the only way to get context is to get more information. And sometimes that context doesn't feel good, and that's okay. And frankly, we're all going to experience all of the information that comes in a different way regardless. Brenda's perspective versus Jeanette's versus Jim's versus mine versus yours versus Isaac's versus Lynn's. Um, it's We all are going to take that differently, and we're all going to see it through a different lens. Um, and so that's where I think I don't want to make a statement about whose responsibility it is, but I think it should be a goal and an endeavor of institutions, whether it's a school, whether it's a historical site, whether it's an entertainment company, to foster curiosity, to make people want more, to not just live with, that's it. Because we can tell the story of the revolution in a 5-minute video,
Mhm.
and if that's all you ever learned about the American Revolution, and now all of a sudden details are coming out that make you feel weird, and it's not just this, like, oh, the British were like, hey, give us money, we're like, no, and then we're free. There's a lot more complexity,
Yeah.
there's a lot more nuance, and that's the case in anything. So
Well, let me add to this, because
sure.
well said, and I think there's a different half of this too, which is, you just said it, entertainment. So there are shows out there that are designed to entertain. There are podcasts out there that are designed to entertain. And Lynn, this one's for you. I think, yes, while we are entertainment, we are also education, and
Mhm.
there's a reason why we're called primary source media. We've brought that up before. If someone is going to listen to our podcast and use it as an additional source of education, we better make sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our lowercase J's, right?
And including our long S's, right?
That's right.
Boo. I'm going to apologize to the audience
Wah, wah.
for Jordan. Wah, 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 wah.
Cue up that sound effect. There'll be more
Yeah,
coming.
yeah, exactly.
But Lynn, is that when I said responsibility that we recognize, I
Mhm.
suppose what I mean is, no. What I mean is, we need to understand that
Mhm.
if little Joey is going to listen to the podcast and spit this stuff to his dad at the dinner table, it better be right. Yeah.
Well, I personally do see it as a responsibility, for myself, because my career is history. So I do see it as a responsibility of offering accurate history with proper sources, proper backing. How people take that, I can't control. All I can do is offer up the most accurate information possible. And I've always had sort of this love-hate relationship with media, especially the internet, because I feel like our attention spans are like this, and we've kind of become a society who reads who reads headlines. Jordan, over here, over here.
Yeah.
Um, who just sort of reads headlines, and then from there, you comment on it. You don't actually read the story. And so that really frustrates me because we have to be super duper entertaining in order to keep attention spans, because we're just so used to things being thrown at us from all angles, and you get as much as you can and then you move on to the next thing. So our responsibility also is to be entertaining enough to keep people here to listen to this good history. Um, and I think anyone who works in history, who does what we do, should understand the weight of that and of what we're doing. Yes, we want to entertain, but I think that's equal to being historically accurate. Whereas when you look at these like cool Hollywood movies, their first and foremost main goal is to entertain. And then if you can get correct history, and great. If you can't, so be it. Whereas we're kind of taking that, setting aside the so be it, and trying to make the two equal. So I personally see it as a responsibility, but that's also kind of my job.
Very,
And I
Right.
wish more people
Right.
saw it that way, you
very
know?
Well,
well
and
said.
yeah, absolutely. And we're also fighting a infinite creation and oversaturation of media at all times, at all
Right.
moments. And so, we do have to break through the noise to tell, as much information as we can. And uh, it's now literally impossible in multiple lifetimes to ingest all of the information that is occurring um, in in today's world, right?
Nor
Like,
would you want to.
no. In fact, we have an episode, our next episode that's releasing. There is a brief discussion on how we feel sorry for historians of today, because the amount of stuff that they're going to have to go through.
They won't have
Um,
these little letters in handwriting on a piece of, vellum. They're going to have to go through a million Twitter,
right,
which
right.
we all know people, aren't exactly the most honest on social media. So,
Oh, they'll have
yeah,
thousands of hours
I
of
just
just
feel
one
bad for them.
person's TikTok or
Can you
Instagram, and
imagine? Yeah.
that's, yeah. Good luck. That's
Good
just
luck
the
with that,
video.
future.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Um, and yeah. Anyway, it is a interesting paradigm in being seen, being heard, and
It's a
you know. Well, I was going to say, Lynn, correct me if you disagree, but also we're not trying to say right or wrong. Like, what we're trying to be is just accurate, right?
Correct.
So like our
Correct.
perspective isn't right. It's we are offering as much perspective as we can, and
Hmm.
that's the responsibility, and making sure it's accurate. So I just want to make sure that distinction is in there too.
Right.
Like
yeah.
The fact that
yeah,
there is no one true history, because, I always like to say, if the three of us experienced, a car accident, and then you asked each of us what happened, we're all going to have wildly, well, maybe not wildly different stories. Probably you would, Jordan. But we're all going to have different stories, and none of them are incorrect. They're just all different perspectives. And the more perspectives you get, the closer you get to an accurate history about what really occurred.
Well said. Very well said. It's a duality that we have to walk that turns my hair gray. So, but I appreciate you both joining me on this episode. If you haven't listened to it already, please listen to Too Complicated for History, episode 7, with the team from Intertwined Slavery at George Washington's Mount Vernon. Like I said, I listened to it 4 times, and I'm going to listen to it again after this. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you in
Thanks,
2
Jordan.
weeks.
thanks, Jordan.